This is Nancy Turner. I'm head of Archives and Special Collections. Today I'm conducting an oral history interview with Roger Pelham. It is September the 15th, 1994. We are in Bracken Library, room 301. Roger, this will be just a conversation, and I want you to relax and enjoy yourself.
No problem about that. I find it very easy to relax if I'm sitting down.
All right. Why don't we start at the beginning? You tell me about your birth and boyhood, and we'll just go from there.
Well, as you can well imagine, this is going to be extemporaneous because I just have to say what comes to my mind. Well, to begin with, I was born in Shelbyville, Indiana, December the 20th, 1908. My mother, whose name was Effie Reicheldaber, from Geneva, Indiana, she died when I was 3 weeks old. So I never really knew her. It was the Reicheldaber family I've known very well through the years. In fact, two of my cousins from that family live where I live, or right to the Atlantic. So, but as to knowing my mother, I didn't. But Dad was working in Shelbyville at a drugstore known as Morris and Depre, an old drugstore there. And I was, I know that I lived there for a while, and then I seem to remember, well, I know that I was brought to Geneva, Indiana, where I lived for a while with my aunts, which was my father's sister. And my memories of those days, there's only one thing I can remember of that living there. Mm-hmm. That was when they brought my grandpa Pelham in a casket after he died. Mm-hmm. And so...
Now, what were your sisters' names?
My sister?
Mm-hmm. I know your aunts.
Oh, Zoe Briggs. Mm-hmm. It was Zoe Pelham. Mm-hmm. And then she married John Briggs at Geneva, Indiana. And then my other aunt, Aunt Lelia, I guess it really was, she became quite a musician, piano. Mm-hmm. And in our family, music was an important thing. My dad played clarinet, even taught clarinet. The only thing he lacked in teaching me clarinet, I studied it and played it, but what he lacked there was a great big bullwhip to make me practice. He couldn't accomplish that too well. So I'm suffering from at my age now, not having done what I wish I had done.
For the record, what was your father's name?
Franklin Edward Pelham.
So you were with your aunts while you were a little boy.
Yeah.
After your mother died.
Now, that period of history is confusing to me. Now, I remember when Dad and the one I call Mom, I don't really ever knew my sister Mary Jane or not.
No.
Well, anyway. But I remember her, I think, picking me up at Geneva, Indiana. And you know, you travel in on the interurbans, electric lines. And I'm still sorry to see those gone. It was a good way to travel. Fast, clean, and economical. Anyway, I only remember arriving in Muncie, and the first scene I remember was South Walnut Street at 2nd Street. Mm-hmm. Now, here's something I cannot prove. I don't know how to prove it, but I wish that I could. And in my memory, I remember the car tracks which left Muncie, went to Newcastle. At the time, I didn't know where they went. I was too young. But I remember the railroad the rail ties laying on the brick street, not having been put down yet. Now, I can remember that getting off there. The reason I say 2nd Street, Otis Moore, owned a drugstore at the corner of 2nd and Walnut. It's on the southeast corner. And when we moved here, we moved to the apartment above the store.
Now, how old were you at this time?
I knew you were going to ask that question. Now, a strange thing. I thought I was 2 years old, maybe 3. And yet, just the other day, I was looking for a copy of the Constitution of the United States. I wanted to look up something. And I opened an old book of my father's. I've got several books of his. Most of them are pharmacy books. This was a book about that wide, this big, thick, about the size of this.
About the size of the
tape recorder. And I opened the flyleaf. Now, I've had that book ever since my father died. He died in 1936. Never really looked into it for anything. And so I looked, but opened up on the flyleaf. Wait a minute. I brought some stuff here I want to get into later. But, yeah, I'll be turn right to it someplace in the book. Well, here it is. Now here's this flyleaf. I Xeroxed the thing. It says, whosoever borrows this book, bear in mind it belongs to F.E. Pelham, who takes a pride in his books and wants to keep them in good condition. They all cost him something. Therefore, do not throw it around as if you were playing football. Every person that this book will benefit is welcome to it, but for the love of God, take care of it. Now, what gets me, the only time I think my father made a mistake in spelling, at least I say, the book was bought, B-O-T, January the 29th, 1912, of Morris and Deputy Drugstore, Shelbyville. Now, the reason I bring this up, that would put me 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that Dad went to work in Muncie before that period. So maybe I was 4 when we moved there.
Okay.
This shook me when I read it, because I'm always trying to figure this thing out in my mind, when, what, and where, and how.
Right.
But anyway, so I'll say that sometime between 1910 and 1912, we got to Muncie and lived above this drugstore. Now, some other things that I remember. 2 babysitters. I was that young. If Mom and Dad went someplace or Mom had something to do.
Now, Mom, your father by this time is remarried.
Yeah, my stepmother.
And her name was?
Merle Williams from Shelbyville.
Mm-hmm.
And a real mother could not have been nicer. And we were very close. And my sister, Mary Jane, which is my half-sister, we were a very close family. And so, now sometimes my mind wanders. I say something that gets me off of something I had in mind.
That's all right.
Okay. Anyway, Dad, we moved. Dad took another job. Well, I'm talking about babysitters. Marion Moore, which was Otis Moore's daughter, and she was pretty well known here in the last few years, and I wish I could talk to her. I can't think of her name now. She's married to a professor, I believe, that had polio back in the day. I remember the last time I saw her, she pushed him around in a wheelchair. She lived about someplace off of Tillotson, down not too far from where Ruth Chin lives, back in there someplace. Anyway, the other babysitter I had was Sam Drake. Do you remember Sam Drake?
I remember the name.
Well, Sam Drake was well known around. I think he was sheriff for a while. He was a character.
Oh, yes.
And
I was thinking of Sam Gray.
No, Drake.
Drake. No, I don't
And
remember him.
because he lived in the next apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd known Sam all those years, and but as I say, he was a character, as most anybody will testify, like several other people. But those 2 people stood out in my mind. And one reason that Marion Moore stood out in my mind, the first song that I ever learned was she taught me. was a takeoff from one of McDowell's things. But anyway, funny the things that impress you through the years. Little unimportant things, but they stick with you.
Tell me a little bit about Sam Drake, and what way was he a character?
Well, Sam, as I recall, Sam was blind in one eye, I think. But he got into all kinds of things in later life, but we always knew each other. And when he had the bar downtown, I'd stop in occasionally. Well, we were talking about Sam Drake. I can't tell you too much about him. Back there when I say he did some babysitting for my mother and dad, I don't remember anything that happened. Only that he was one, and so handy. It was the next apartment. Our back porches were together, and that sort of thing. So it was a kind of a natural thing. And so that's about all I can remember of that situation. But we moved then. I know this, that in 1913 we lived down on East Willard Street. I just went by the place to see if it was still there. And I think I saw the house. It's quite a bit changed, but it's there.
What block was it in?
It'd be in the one just off of Madison, west of Madison.
Do you know do you happen to remember the address?
No, and I couldn't see it when I went by there this morning. It was on the alley, and there's still a house, kind of a big house on the alley. And I remember what amounted to a nice TV set today. Dad had a Victrola, because he loved music, particularly band, and today I love band music. And we had that thing. It was for years. And then Dad taught clarinet. And he was, of course, he worked in the drugstore, which at that time was Benetton's. Clyde Benetton owned it, and he got shot. And then Dad bought the store from his widow later.
Would you explain how Clyde Benetton got shot?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I remember the thing. See, we bought the store and then lived upstairs above it.
Now this was on Willard Street?
Willard and Madison.
Willard and Madison. Okay.
There's a bar next door. It's an empty thing on the corner there now.
Which corner is it?
It is northeast.
Northeast. Okay.
Yeah. And Jackson School was one block up.
Okay.
And I went to that school. Now, what happened? This is Prohibition, I'll say. Clyde and a friend was closing a store. It may have been 11 o'clock, it may have been midnight, I don't remember. But Clyde told his friend, he says, I'm going back and mix a drink. So he walked through the doorway. Now, like here, I got something I'll tell you about later. Like here would be the prescription counter. Over here was a door that went to the front of the store, and over here was a door.
So the prescription counter was in the back.
In the back,
and
big partition here.
With a partition,
yeah.
And then there's a door on either side.
Yeah, doorway it was.
Doorway, out into the main drugstore.
Now, his friend was standing out in the middle of the store, and then walked, I do remember, this black guy's name was Taylor. See what I mean by simple things sticking in your mind and other important things you forget. But anyway, he didn't know Clyde was in the back room. He just saw the gun. He walked in, pulled out a gun, and he says, this is a stick-up. Well, Clyde heard him. Clyde was left-handed, and he had a Savage automatic, 32 automatic in his left pocket. But in order to do anything, he had to step out here, because he's left-handed, to shoot at the guy.
Out behind the partition.
Yeah. Now, I don't think that he got a shot off, but the interesting thing to me is this man was a good 25, maybe 30 feet away from Clyde. When he stepped out in here, the guy shot, and we have a piece of paper there. Just want to show you one little thing there. And the bullet, here was the prescription counter. Oh, do that on there. And the doorway here. and over here was the other doorway, and the other case and things out here. Now, the counter was here.
So the prescription counter was to the back of the store,
Yeah,
and Clyde was standing back of the prescription counter.
yeah, he was standing right here, mixing a drink. Now, when he heard the fellow say, "This is Sticka," he stepped over here, and this fellow, what his position was, I don't know. It must have been in here someplace, because he shot twice at Clyde, and right in the corner of that prescription case was the marks of 2 bullets, this close together.
Just side by side.
And this hit a finishing nail here and come up and hit Clyde in the heart and killed him.
So in other words, when the man standing out in the middle of the store came in and aimed the gun, Clyde, who was behind the prescription counter,
Yeah.
stepped out to his right, but he had,
to
to step.
because he left-handed.
But he had to step clear out
Yeah.
so he could fire with his left hand.
Uh-huh.
And the man out in the middle of the store, who was planning to rob, fired 2 shots.
Well, the man who came in the door was over here, closer to the front door is on an angle,
Right.
like that. And Clyde's friend was standing here. So the guy shooting here, and he must have shot from here, because in order to get around this corner, he couldn't have shot from here.
Right. So
But
he
he
came
shot-
in the door
He came in the door and said, "This is Sticka."
directly opposite
Yeah.
the prescription counter.
Right. Now, another thing, Clyde always had a dog.
Mhm.
And the dog, over here on this side of the store, were wall cases and show cases.
Now this is to the left of the prescription counter, out
Yeah, and
into
out
the
in the store.
into the drugstore.
Now, the dog come out around here, and he shot twice at the dog, and from that same distance, the holes in that door were like that. So the guy was pretty accurate with a gun.
So the man was a good shot.
Uh,
He shot to his right towards the shelves
Yeah,
where the dog was.
yeah.
Did he kill the dog?
No, he didn't hit the dog.
Okay.
The dog jumped or ran something. Now, the funny thing was, Dad bought the store, I don't know how soon after that, it was a while, that Mrs. Benenden tried to operate the thing, but it was a lost cause. See, that area was a place in Muncie that was not the most desirable. The district behind from Willard Street almost up to, not Kilgore, what the heck was the name of the street? Anyway, just before you got the railroad track, was mostly black people, and on south of Willard Street was what we would call blue-collar workers. They worked in offices and stores and factories and things. So there was a unmentionable dividing line there. There were no rules. It was just the way it worked out. And anyway, so he killed Clyde, and then
Just as a freak, really, because he fired 2 shots at Clyde and hit the finishing nail
if it had, it went into the wood and tore out like that.
behind Clyde's
But
head.
there was a big finishing nail right there, and that deflected the bullet up.
Okay.
And it hit him in the heart. See?
Okay, so then it hit him in the back, really.
No, hit him in the front.
Oh,
Here.
okay, but it.
He was standing here, see?
Okay, I see.
Yeah. And so, anyway, what I was going to say, when he shot at the dog, 2 holes like that, then Dad bought the store sometime after that, and a woman come in one day and bought about a quarter pound of cotton. It used to come in boxes about this long, about that big square,
Mm-hmm.
in a blue box with a red cross on it.
Mhm.
Johnson, I think it was. She went home. A few days later, she came back and she brought the 2 slugs. The cotton stopped the bullets in that box.
They were the cotton box was up on the shelf.
No, it was in a low in the under shelving behind wooden doors.
Oh, I see.
And so she brought the slugs in.
The
One know where they
the
came
2
from.
bullets had gone
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
box
And-
of cotton.
But the interesting thing to me, he shot twice with that great of accuracy there, and the holes were practically interlocked. See?
Mhm.
That's a pointless detail maybe, but anyway, that's what happened. After that, then, you see, one time that drugstore was a cover-up for many undercover, undesirable activities. That place when we moved in there had signal buzzers and electric locks all over the darn place. And gambling.
In Benedum's drugstore.
Yeah, it was a cover-up for the thing. see.
Did Mr. Benedum know this, or did he run
He
that?
ran it.
Well, he ran this
Yeah,
gambling.
Yeah, Clyde Benham was not. Well, you ever hear of Clarence Benham, the attorney?
Yes.
They were cousins. And then Charlie Benham owned a grocery store across the street from Dad's grocery store. He built that building. I just came by there. It's still there. And then his wife, and he lived back of the drugstore. They lived back at, it'd be 3rd and Madison. Willard Street is 4th.
Right.
And so they lived there and had a nice house and a barn and everything there. Now,
so they lived on the corner of 3rd and Madison?
Yeah. Southeast corner.
Okay.
And
now this is Clyde Benham's cousin.
Yeah.
Who operated a grocery store.
Charlie Benham, yeah.
Charlie.
Well, later he operated that. He was in with Clyde on it stuff. My gosh. I've got, you see, I had all those pictures of Muncie. They're turned over to the archives here. They bought them. The last negatives.
The Swift collection.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
And in there is a picture. I haven't been able to think of this guy's name for years. Harry Dirk. He was arrested for everything except over parking. And we never knew for sure where Charlie Benham's wife was Harry Dirk's nephew, or whether it actually was her son by a former marriage or an unmarried or something. We never knew. But Harry Dirk was a guy who just got in trouble all the time. And there's a picture of him after he was arrested, the front and the side, when they put him in jail. Also, there's many pictures in there regarding these things that you want to talk about. Mm-hmm. For instance, when George Dale was arrested, and I use that in some of my slide talks about George Dale, and of course, and there's thousands or hundreds, I should know, there's probably not that many, many pictures of Ku Klux Klan parades and that stuff.
Right,
but back in the 20s were very, well, they were out in front at every time there could be parades and everything like that. And if you were a Protestant, you were assumed to belong to the Klan. If you were a Catholic, you were assumed to be an enemy. Mm-hmm. And it was really a horrible time of hatred. And I learned a lot through there. And I'm glad I did learn, because I have many friends today that are Jewish and Catholic. And I just, on the way up here, I heard a radio. I listened to a very fine FM radio at Greenville now. And they were talking about Yom Kippur. And I didn't call Sid and wish him a happy day. Anyway, but those were times. Now, another thing that happened down there, my mother's father and mother lived over on Elm Street. Mm-hmm. We finally lived on Elm Street. Before we lived on Willard Street. No, it had to be after.
Now, this is your mother's father and mother.
My stepmother's.
Stepmother's
yeah.
father and mother. And what were their names?
Williams.
Okay.
He worked for John Hampton. You remember Hampton?
Yes.
Well, they had a furniture store out on South Walnut Street and a funeral parlor. Mm-hmm. That used to be a part of the furniture business, I guess. And my grandpa, now for some reason or other, I called him Uncle Charlie. And Mom's mother, instead of being a grandma, I called her Aunt Meg. Whatever started that stuff. Mm-hmm. And my dad's mother, I always called her Pa. You can't explain those things. They just happen.
The nicknames just stick.
Anyway, they lived over there, and then they lived on a house on the west side of the street.
About what 100 blocks?
Well, it'd be the first one south of Willard.
Okay.
And then they moved to one across the street, a double house, where we lived in the south half of that after a time. And
now these are the Williamses?
Yeah, they lived over there. Then we moved over in the other side of this house. And I can't remember the years there, but I have a picture. I should have brought that darn thing. Picture of me sitting on, I'll mention something, you won't know what it is. Irish Mail, do you know what that is?
Sure, it's a little...
Well, you pump it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Anyway, a picture of me with my dog Teddy sitting there in the front yard of that place. But now there I had to be about 6 years old, see. Then, of course, going to school, I went to Jackson School. I went to kindergarten there. and then Jackson School, then down to Garfield, and then Wilson Junior High, and downtown Central, and then Ball State.
So, did you grow up in that? You didn't grow up in the Willard Street neighborhood, did you?
Well, basically, yes. Dad had the drugstore till the Depression.
Okay. So
And
by the Depression, you were how old?
Well, I'd be 20.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
So
well,
your childhood.
No, I was wrong there. The Depression really started October the 29th, 1929.
Right.
And that's when it started. Well, I had graduated from high school in 28.
So you really spent your childhood in the Willard Street area.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Would you talk about some of the neighbors that you could identify in that area,
Oh,
if you can remember?
I can't remember names. There are a bunch of characters there. Guy, George Smith, lived down at the corner of 5th and Madison on the northwest corner. He was one of the loafers of our drugstore, which we had quite a few. And one of the characters, and there was so many others, and today their names have escaped me, but I'd never forget George, because he was down there a lot, and nice guy. We had a few, we had quite a few black customers, never any trouble, never anything, and they were all friendly people then, except for one thing, and what made me bring up this Elm Street thing. My Uncle Charlie and Aunt Mag, and there was two daughters. They had a fellow, my uncle, their brother. Their son, Aunt Mag, and Uncle Charlie's son. And he worked for Dad in the drugstore after we bought him.
That would have been his brother-in-law, your dad's brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
And what was his name?
Valjean Williams.
Valjean Williams.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, and they lived mostly there on South Elm Street. I would like to have gone by and got the address. I looked down there and the house was gone. I'd like to have had the one on the other side of the street, I think, is still there. But anyway, my aunt, who was named Fern Williams at the time, went with a guy by the name of Jim Fletcher. They lived at Jefferson and Willard. Nice home there, and in fact, Jim Fletcher, Fred Fletcher, George Fletcher, and Harley Fletcher.
Yeah, I knew Fred Fletcher.
They were all the sons. And in fact, old Mr. Fletcher looked like Thomas Edison and actually made several inventions. And but the thing was, now that was about a block from where my mom's sister, Fern, and the rest of the family lived. Jim and Fern went together, and she worked at a telephone company when it was above the old interurban line down on Charles and Mulberry.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd come out the door one day, one Sunday, to go to work, and some guy shot down the alley, and she fell. The whole family thought she got shot, but she fainted. There was a murder 13 Sundays straight down there. We had a very, very colorful neighborhood, and so we had a lot of things. Oh, we were talking. One fellow, I have all these groups I have coffee with and all this stuff. And we have one in the afternoon at Frisch's. One fellow there by the name of John Trone. When I first met him, I said, "You from Muncie?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Do you know where Mulberry Street is?" I said, "Yeah. That's where all the prostitutes were." See, he said he used to go up there. Oh, yeah, okay. So here some time back, I come up here once a month for a breakfast with the committee for our class reunion. We just enjoy each other so much, we just keep going. So we were meeting at the time out the Holiday Inn. So after breakfast one day, I told girls, Mary Frances Watson and Hilma Marsh and a whole bunch of them. I said, I want 5 or 6 of you gals to help me do something after we get through the breakfast. What? I said, I want you to go down 3 blocks to Mulberry Street. It goes throughout, you know. So I got all these gals around there pointing up to Mulberry Street, and I made a picture and gave it to him. He told me that. Everybody, When I said I'm coming to Muncie, they said, you going to buy Mulder Street? I said, no use now. There's a factory sitting there. Anyway.
The girls are out of business.
Yeah. Well, at least there. And anyway, I wandered way away from what we was talking about, but it's just one of the points that come up around there. I had many friends down there. A fellow named Merle Vandell. I was just thinking about him as I come in town. We were in school together.
Where did he live?
He lived on Jefferson, on the west side of the street, up a little ways from Willard. And that's about all I can tell you about him. There were others. A fellow named Art Ballinger lived down further on east on Willard Street. And it's not the Art Ballinger connected with the cemetery. And well, there's a lot of things there. I came up here to give a talk a few years ago for an old friend of mine, Charles Wirt.
Now, your schooling, you say, was at Jackson School?
Yeah, there used to be a kindergarten on the north side of that block area, and I went there to kindergarten, and then Jackson School.
Now, where was that located?
Well, now there's a community thing there. It was at the corner of 2nd and Madison to 3rd and Madison on the east side, and it was a square block. Big old brick building.
Do you remember the principal's name?
Yeah. I said that now. What the heck was his name? Miller.
Okay.
Mr. Miller. And I don't remember any of the teachers' names. But even though I've been thinking about this thing, and just little things, pieces. Well, like I remember part of a poem I learned at Jackson School, and I don't know where the heck it's from. So I go, oh, how I love to ride on the fierce swimming bursting tide, when every mad wave rounds the moon, and their whistle aloft the tempest tune. I don't know where it's from. It drives me nuts. And anyway, there's little things like that pop up. Pointless things, but kind of wonderful, you know.
So you went from Jackson School
to
Garfield.
Yeah.
For,
well, they only had, let's see, they only had grades up maybe to the 4th grade, maybe the 5th grade. No, that wouldn't be quite right. I think I went to Garfield School a couple of years before I went out to Wilson Junior High.
So it'd be maybe 4th and 5th grade up there.
Yeah, it might be. And so I never will forget one thing that happened at Garfield School. At a wonderful, then one of your classes you took, you didn't choose it, you took it, was music. And I loved it. Miss Lamb lived on Jefferson Street, just down from Charles on the west side of the street, because I took some piano lessons from her. And but we had a music contest back then. They started it. There was a music supervisor by the name of Miss Hunter that went to all the schools to the music class and to see how they were getting along. She was kind of a supervisor of all music all over the town. And so for a long time, they played about 50 classical records in the class. You were supposed to recognize the music, name the music, who wrote the music, and spell it all right.
Now this was in about the
Well, I was in the sixth grade. Yeah.
So you were at Garfield by this time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I loved it because I loved the music. And I remember an argument. Dad was a realist when it comes. There's no such thing as Russia. It was Russia. That's the way it was spelled. And in Ohio, that's the way they pronounce it. But Dad, I got in an argument one time about Beethoven. He said, it's Beethoven. So anyway, but you're supposed to recognize the music, who was the composer, and he had forms to write this stuff down and spell it all right. Had 25 pieces you had to recognize. I think I was the only one in the school that recognized all 25 of them and misspelled every damn word. Miss Lamb just about died.
But you knew the music.
I knew the music. That's the important thing. Anyway, that just one of the little points that I recall. And
what kind of games did you play with the other children on the out on the playground? Do you remember?
Well, on the playground, like at recess or something, I don't remember too many I played. I tried to play a little basketball, but I ended up wanting to be the referee. I didn't.
You wouldn't tell them what to do.
Yeah. And I remember we had a game playing with some tough team out in the south part of town there, and I wanted to referee it. Mr. Miller said, "No, you keep the time." That's our privilege as a referee. Anyway, but as far as game is concerned, myself, I've never been very athletic, and today I don't care much about athletics now. Golf, football, basketball, and I can take a little baseball. It don't last too long. But there's so many things to be interested in, and I've never just been interested in. I got a kick out of when I started having coffee with one bunch down there at breakfast time when I moved to Trotwood. Met these guys. We'd have coffee every morning. They got talking. Their complete vocabulary surrounds golf, a little bit football and basketball and that stuff. So one of them asked me a question about football, and I said, I know nothing about football. I don't care for the game. Well, what'd you do when you was in high school? I said, I went to every basketball game and every football game. Well, why did you like it then and don't like it now? I said, I didn't like it then. I played in the band, and I loved to play in the band.
You went to play in the band.
Yeah. And so anyway.
So you went on then from Garfield to Wilson Junior High School.
Yeah. And then I think it was about 2 years there, and then we went, 10th, 11th, 12th. Yeah, 10th, 11th, and 12th was uptown at Central High.
Now, was this in the old Central High School?
Yeah.
Now, this was the one
where balls tore it down, put up their building.
Okay, so you
went
went.
The old post office.
Okay, so about what time was this when you started the high school?
Well,
because that was that.
Well, 28, 27, 20. It'd be 26.
Okay, so they had already put up at that time, a new Central High School to replace the first one.
Yeah, the first one was torn. I don't know where it was in the same place or not. But anyway, the one I went to was the one they tore down to build Ball's office there.
Okay.
Yeah. And
what kinds of activities did you participate in at Central?
Now, going back for a minute to Wilson, I played in the orchestra there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I never wanted to get up in front of people, and I was always scared. I always said I couldn't memorize anything and all that stuff. Anyway, Gladys Olin she had the music department at Wilson, and she got on me about I wouldn't be in the class play and I wouldn't do this, wouldn't do that. She said, you're going to do something. You're going to conduct the orchestra in front of the whole school. Well, I had to conduct two pieces, one in 4/4 time, one in 3/4 time. That was my swan song for Wilson Junior High School. And but anyway, it ruined my life. I've been wanting to be a conductor ever since.
A referee or a conductor?
I told somebody the other day, I said, a woman ruined my life. She said, why do you mean? I told her what she had made me do, and I said, now, ever since I've been wanting to conduct. I do a lot of conducting in the basement where nobody's there. Zoo and May and some of these guys don't know it, but I get along fine with them. Anyway, other activities. I was never much of a joiner of things, and we had parties and things like that, friends, and so.
Do you remember any of the teachers at Central High School that were favorites?
Well, I remember some that wasn't favorites. I remember Miss Hutzel. She had taught German, but due to the wisdom of our politics, when the World War I started, they quit teaching German. The idiots, that's when they should have taught it.
Right.
But anyway, I in my final semester at high school, I had signed up to take solid geometry. I never was good at mathematics. I was always about 3 days behind the rest of the class. And Miss Hutzel would get me up at the blackboard and fry me. And boy, I couldn't even think what 2 times 2 was when she'd tear into me. And boy, one day she said, "You go down and see Mr. Martin." Luther Martin was the principal. And I went down, and someone named George Hoover, he was already talking to him, and George was an electrical engineer, what he was going to go to Purdue, and he had to have mathematics. And Mr. Martin says, "Sit there, Roger. I'll be waiting a little bit." So he went in, tore into George, and he then finally told George to go back to class. Turned to me, he said, "You heard what I said, George." He said, "The same thing goes for you." I said, "Now, Mr. Martin, I want to ask you something." I took solid geometry as an elective. I didn't want to take it because I thought it would be something I should know something about. But I said, "I don't have to have it." I said, "That won't, if I fail that, it won't keep me from graduating, will it?" Well, he said, "No, so don't even go back to class." I said, "I want to go back to class, but I'm not going to." Now, there was one English subject I had to finish up. And I said, "I'm going to spend my time working on that. But if I have any time left, I'll work on that." He said, "All right. But if you don't want to go back to class, you don't have to." I went back to class, and Miss Hutzel didn't call on me the rest of the year. I passed on 3 red C's.
Well, you passed.
Passed, that was
and
the whole thing.
You stuck it out.
Yeah. But I took a lot of, everybody was wanting to get out of school in 3.5 years. What the heck's the hurry? There's things I wanted to take. So I stayed 4.5 years. But I took, well, I was in the band, and I took Spanish, and I took commercial geography under Lloyd Cooley. And there was
What was your opinion of Mr. Cooley's teaching ability?
Oh, I thought he was tremendous. And he had a most delightful poem. And we had him for one of our class reunions. And I'm going to interrupt this proceeding, and I want Lloyd Cooley to tell the poem that he told in my class in commercial geography. I said, it's all about the guy up in the attic and going through books and things, and he found a hare. And it's a very cute poem. I wish I had a copy of it. And it goes in and gets you all worked up about this hare from his sweetheart, see. The last line is, "But what if you found this hare in your soup?" Anyway, I liked Lloyd. He was a strange guy, but he was interesting. I think interesting people are much nicer to be around than just plain straight out educated that don't do anything but tell you how smart they are. But I liked him, and I certainly liked Ernie Mannering, the conductor of the band. And I liked most of my teachers. I had Bernice Hamilton for Spanish, and there again, I took Spanish. I don't know why I took it. Well, I kind of liked it, and I had taken Latin, and the teacher, I don't know her name, but she tried to talk me into taking another year of Latin. And I said, "Well, look what a struggle it's been for me." She said, "I'll see that you get through it."
Is this Miss Brown?
No, that doesn't sound right.
She was there later, I guess.
It'd be in let's see, it had to be 1924 or 25 on it. Oh no, it was high school. It'd be up 1926, 27, something. And I remember quite a few of the teachers, but at the moment I can't recall her name. But Miss Dalby, I don't know if you ever heard of her or not.
She was the librarian.
Yeah. I never will forget, I was sitting in the big room, not the auditorium, what the heck it's called?
Study hall?
Study hall, yeah. Reading a magazine called Amazing Stories. It was all about futuristic things. Boy, did she light into me on that. But there was a lot of things in high school. I'm going with a girl, I had dates with a girl that I liked very much. Her name was Enola Dean. Her father and my father were good friends. And that wasn't why we got together, just as so happened. But I remember she had a date with somebody one night, and it broke me up. I ran into a fellow, a friend that I knew her. I said, "Hey, do me a favor." He said, "What?" I said, "I know that Enola had a date with somebody last night. See if you can find out who it was." He said, "I already know, it was me." Anyway, all those things are little pointless details to look back on.
So after so you spent your time at Central High School
Yeah.
and finished there, graduated.
And then several of us went to Ball State. Well, Dad wanted me to be a pharmacist. I couldn't be a pharmacist. Well, he taught me into taking a business course. So that's what I did out there. And I'll say it's the one thing that I learned out there was typing, and I still use it today. So it was well worth time. And I had a wonderful teacher out there with name DeMott. You might remember her.
Charlie?
Yeah. And I liked her. I had her for one English course. Literature, I think it was. And that's the most I can remember there.
What was Ball State like at the time that you attended?
Well, one of the biggest differences that I could point out was they had 1,200 students in 1928. And I think there's at least 1,300 here now. Anyway, well, the old administration building is still there, isn't it? Well, that was the administration, and the science building. And well, what the heck was it? Oh, the library, and they had an auditorium there. And well, they didn't have. They started gymnasium after I left, and we went out in the field. I was doing playing different games and things in it.
Did you graduate from Ball State?
I only went one semester.
Oh, you just went one semester?
Well, I tell you, I soon saw that what I was doing was a lost cause because I couldn't see myself sitting at a desk poring over books of numbers. And so I quit and went to work at Warner Gear in the engineering department. That sounds great, but I was a blueprint boy. Flunky, but anyway. But I like Ball State, and I like the idea. Now there again, I was invited to 2 or 3 fraternities to join. I could see no point in it. So I lived here. Why would I join and pay money for something I wasn't interested in? And so I didn't do that. There was all through school. Dad went out of business during the Depression. I think it was 32, 33, off the store. And get down doing $1.25 a day of business, and that stuff, you don't last long. Well, anyway, the schooling, I enjoyed the things I did here at Ball State. But it just wasn't, and particularly this business course, it just left me cold. And I went to work at Warner Gear, and I really looked at Warner Gear as it was then as my college. I learned so much there. When I do something today, a lot of times I'll thought, where did I learn how to do that? A lot of it was Warner Gear, or my dad's store, or my own store where I started in 36. But as far as my, did you ever hear of John Weinbrenner?
Yes.
Dr. Weinbrenner now. John was one of my best friends and still is today. I have 3 I call best friends, old best friends. There's Charles Wirt. I started to mention a while ago. Why did I do that? Charles Wirt, John Weinbrenner, and Bill Moffett. I mentioned them in that order because that's the order in which I met them and became acquainted. Charles, I started to tell a while ago, Charles had me give a talk to a joint session of the Lions Club of Farmland and Parker. And why I mentioned this, I stopped at Charlie's house before we got to the place to give the talk. And so he said, I just wonder if you remember where you developed your first roll of film. I said, Charlie, don't be taking the words out of my mouth. I said, I know all about that. Just keep quiet. And anyway, Bill Moffett and Katie came over when I did that. And so I got, many of the people knew me even over in Parker because Dad had owned a store over there for a while. And so we had a good time. I got up to explain my background. I said, Charlie Wirt and his brother Ray lived at just east of Madison Street, about the third house down on the south side street. And
No, on Willard Street?
On Willard Street, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. They had in their attic, oh gosh, a wireless, which was before radio, you know, code stuff, and a chemical laboratory. So I started my talk out. I said, people want to know where I learned about photography, what got me interested in this thing, and I said, I'll tell you. I said, I went to the East Willard Street School of Technology, which was Charlie Ward's attic. And so anyway, I did learn a lot there. And again, like to say, the electrical thing, we did a lot of stuff in that. So,
may I ask you about, you mentioned just a little bit ago that your father lost his store in the Depression. Would you talk a little bit about the Depression and your family's experience?
oh yeah, I hear people talking about the horrible Depression in 1978. You don't know what a depression is. When you see people on the corner selling apples for a nickel just to give them a little money, and all the terrible things that went on at the time, and the Depression was a strange thing. I of course was old enough to remember it, because that happened in 30, and I graduated high school in 28. So, and I worked at Warner Gear. I went in 1929. I went to work at Warner Gear, blueprint room, and then I was advanced to a job in the office. And on the 29th of October, when the market crashed, all those guys running around wringing their hands. Everything looked the same to me. I couldn't get excited about it. That excitement came later. But one rather strange and interesting thing happened in our store. A man walked into Dad's store pretty early in the Depression, and it was cold. He just had a suit coat on. He come in. We had a stove in the center of the store then, you know, no central heating and all. He stood there, and Dad got talking to him, and so Dad says, well, he says, where are you from? And the guy says, Cleveland, Ohio. And Dad said, what'd you do in Cleveland? He says, I played violin in the Cleveland Symphony. He did. And Dad went upstairs and got his violin brought down and says, play something. He had played in the symphony, no question. He had sold his violin then.
Got no job now.
And just horsing around just trying to find something to do. So Mom was making soup. So Dad thought the guy ate. And one point, he walked in and he didn't ask for a handout. He said, have you got anything that I can do to make $1? Dad said, yes. He says, I've got a job. And he said, if you turn it down, I wouldn't blame you a bit, because he says, I don't have the insides built to take it. So the guy said, well, what is it? He says, something has crawled under this floor in the back room, died, and it stinks terribly. The guy says, give me a crowbar and a hammer.
Now, this was a musician from the
Yeah.
Cleveland Symphony.
He dug up the floor there and found a dead cat or rat, I forget what it was, and got rid of it. Well, then that's when Dad went up to the talking. We got the violin, and then he gave us all some. We had supper, so he had soup with us, and but it was not uncommon to have many things happen like that. Because the people then were roaming around. They weren't looking for. They just wanted something to help. I got a part-time job with a fellow cleaning hats. The drugstore wasn't capable of, if I made a little money extra. And the bums even downtown. This was across from the police station.
Now, who owned this hat store?
Max Mason, the cleaning place. And fellow come in and wanted to know if we had a Hoover sheet newspaper, so he could sleep at night on it. And so many things happened like that. And business was terrible.
But you had a part-time job there. Were you still working at Warner Gear?
No, see, when I worked at Warner Gear, everything was going fine. The Depression come along, but it had really I mean, the market crashed,
Mm-hmm.
but it hadn't settled down to where jobs like I had were being threatened yet.
Mm-hmm.
That would come later. And what Warner Gear used to do, and why I liked the place so much, they could do things back then because there was no CIO or anything. They could do with employees what they wanted. They would take young fellows that came in there, just ordinary office job like a flunky or an office boy or anything. You know Swain Russey.
Yes.
Swain had been an office boy, but just a year or two before I went to work there. And they would advance him if they showed any interest in the place. That's what they wanted. And Andy Rose and what the heck was that Esterling's name?
John?
John, yeah. Many of them had jobs there like that. And
Started out that way.
yeah. But they had the advantage of being otherwise, too. They were
Yeah, Andy
being
Rose had a background of money even then.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
I won't go into a story about Andy's father and me. We had quite a discussion. But anyway, what
Right.
they would do, they transferred me from the blueprint room into the engineering office.
Mm-hmm.
Then later they put me over in another department. I'd be there a few months. And I was in the experimental department. What they did, I went down the assembly line, the stock room, and they would, what they were doing was giving you a chance to find out everything about the place.
Mm-hmm.
Then, if something opened up they could do, then they would
Move you up.
they'd promote you. And if you find, there's no reason why you couldn't go up to the real, just like Swain Russey. He went up to the top. Now, there was things about Swain I didn't care about, but that goes all people. Nobody's perfect, and so that's one thing I've always tried to do. Is even people who do things to maybe irritate you, I don't go and visit them at their house and that stuff, but there's no sense of worrying about things like that. And but a friend of mine who was in the same department, although he had been on the drawing board of draftsmen, they were starting to lay people off. And I went to my boss. I said, "Hey, I've worked here 3 years and I have never taken a vacation. Why don't you lay me off and let George have my job?" He said, "You sure you want to do that?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I don't mind being off a few weeks."
Oh dear.
I didn't foretell the future too well. But anyway, that's what happened until I got laid off. And then when the depression hit, that's when I went to work in cleaning hats in Max Mazel's place, and did other things. I know in 1927, I was still in high school, and several of us went to Newcastle. They had, you know what DeMolay is?
Yes.
Well, they had a chapter there, a Rose City chapter of Order of DeMolay. Several of us went down there and joined, and then they started one here. And I was the first master counselor here in Muncie, the Edmundburg Falls chapter. And so I got a lot of training, a lot of things out of that, and met a lot of friends. Phil Schooley, I met him there, and we're still good friends. I wish I'd get Phil to do something other than sit around that damn apartment of his. But anyway, a lot of those things. Dad Burt, Frank Burt, was the dad of the chapter, and a lot of nice things took place. So
Now, after this is the very beginning of the Depression,
yeah,
and you were working in the hat store. Had your father lost the drugstore by then?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
your family was really in kind of tight
Yeah.
circumstances.
Well, to give you an idea, Dad moved from Muncie to Huntington
Mhm.
as a registered pharmacist for a job of $12 a week.
He was desperate.
It was that bad.
Mhm.
And then, when the Owl Drugstore, Perrin and Harper, I believe, owned
Mhm.
that. Ed Harper? Yeah. They bought a store out on South Walnut Street. Can't remember the name it was, but they bought that. And Ed Harper called me. He said, "Where's your father?" And I told him. He said, "How's he doing?" I said, "Well, Ed, he's making $12 a week." He says, "I want him down here to manage this new store of ours. We'll start him out $25 a week." So,
Now, what year was this, about the
Well,
early 30s?
let's see. Dad died in 1936. And must have been about 34, 35. And and he managed that store. And it was a nice store.
Now, where was it located, on South Walnut Street?
On Walnut at 8th Street.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of the guy's name that owned the store. He was an old fellow that he didn't have much of a store in that time.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't much interested or something. I don't know where he was getting too old.
What corner was that?
It wasn't on a corner. It was right. Well, if you take the northeast corner of 8th and Walnut, I think the corner lot was actually maybe rather big, but the first room in that row of buildings was a drugstore.
Mm-hmm.
It may still be a drugstore. I think that's all it was.
Mm-hmm.
Across the street to the south was the Camel's Ice Cream Company
Okay.
on the southeast corner.
Okay.
And we lived down about 3 blocks down 8th Street at the time. And that's when, now I mentioned D. Millay. Well, I didn't have a job, and many others. Frank Burt got me a job out at Ball Brothers Factory, and I worked there until I started in business in 1936. And
That's when you started in the photography business? Okay. I mean, up till now, you haven't mentioned any interest in photography. When did it begin?
well, when Dad had the drugstore, I played around with cameras.
Mm-hmm.
But to be interested in really doing something about it, what happened? My aunt, she said she'd loan me $500. I was going to get in business. I had one lined up out on University Avenue. The guy wanted me to come in with him, and she didn't like the idea, and I'm glad she didn't. She talked me out of it, but she said, "I'll give you $500.
So your aunt loaned you $500.
Yeah.
And which aunt was this?
My father's sister, one of his sisters.
Okay. What
And
was
Zoe Briggs was her name now.
Zoe Briggs. Okay.
And so Ball's brothers bought the old McNaughton store. I was working in what's known as the parcel post department out the office. It was a real nice, funky job. You packaged blue books, mailed them out to individuals, and maybe one fruit jar or something to send out for a sample. And all day long you're doing things like that.
That was at Ball Brothers.
At Ball Brothers. I stood beside George Ball while he wrote a check for $250,000 and handed it to me. He said, "Take that up to Frank," somebody who was the president of Merchants Bank. And then he laughed. But you had things like that. And on the same trip, I had to take a dress off for Gertrude Barrett and Mrs. Keener to try on. And I also had another assignment that was real thrilling. I was supposed to buy a greeting card that would appeal to a 6-month-old baby. Now, that's a pretty good problem. I went to the card store, and I got to buy something. You find it for me. And I told him it was quite a problem. But you had all that kind of run around to do. So. When they bought Ball stores, Fred Petty asked me to go up there at the store in the afternoon and set up a little parcel post department so I could ship stuff to customers. And I said, "Well, I'll be glad to do that, but I want understanding. I'm still working here at the office. I'm not working for Ball stores. I don't want to be involved in department stores." Well, I had gone down the basement of Ball stores to pick up a bunch of aluminum wire to ship to somebody. And we, of course, had to ride the freight elevator to do that with a lot of the employees. I stepped on the elevator with all these pots and pans. And Mr. Whitehill, the old Banner Whitehill.
Right. It was a furniture store.
Yeah, furniture. And he was managing Ball stores for a while. He stepped on the elevator, and the rest of the thing was filled with employees. I had to take these up to the 4th floor, top floor. And he decided to make an example of me. He said, why are you carrying those? What are you going to do with them? It just went on, pointless little question. And when I was furious that he would ask me so many stupid questions. He didn't know who I was, only to him I worked there, see. And got up to the top floor, and he was right behind me. And it was kind of a jam there, and I stopped. Well, he had to stop me. Fred Van Skyke, I don't know if you ever knew Fred. Huh? He was the president of our high school class in 28. Fred was standing there. He worked there at the store. And I said, Fred, what the hell can you get into in this town that there's not one on every corner and Ball Brothers don't own them? And Fred looked at me and said, start a photostat shop. I said, all right, I will. I went around the department and got working, and always I'd go back out to the office. I had about an hour's time to kill. I got thinking about that. Maybe that's not too bad. Wasn't sure what a photostat was. Do you know what it is?
No.
Well, today you would say you're going to make a Xerox.
Oh, I see.
But back then, the only legal way you could make a paper was by photostat, which was a big camera. You photographed it when the first print come out as a negative, white lines on black. And you have to develop that, fix it, wash it, dry it, and then put it down, rephotograph it, and then they had a positive print. And it costs about, for the two things, it costs about 70 cents. Now you can go in for a nickel and get a better print made.
Right. I kind of thought I had heard I knew
Yeah.
the term,
Well,
but I wasn't sure that's what it was.
It
how it was used.
was about the only legal way you could make a reproduction of a document and be accepted in court. Well, I thought, by golly, I got some Ball Brothers stationery, and I wrote a letter to the Photostat Corporation. I wanted to find out about a photostat machine. Well, you can believe on Ball Brothers stationery, they gave quick attention. This guy called there, wanted to see Mr. Pelham. The receptionist called me. I could see his feelings kind of fall. So I told him what I wanted to do, and he knew that I didn't know anything about it, and he talked me out of it. I said, all right. Well, I had out of my system anyway. I'd done something. 2 weeks later, the guy come back and talked me into it. Well, that's when my aunt had $500. I put it down on a photostat machine, and they carried the balance. It cost $1,600 for the thing, and then I had to get plumbing. I went to the second floor of the Weiser building, set up. And back then, I could hear people coming down the wooden floor of the hall upstairs, and if the clicking heel stopped pretty quick, I knew they went in the loan company. And then on to the 2 or 3 other things. As we come down, as far as my door was, they probably went in the doctor's office across there. One woman came in with 2 little kids one time, just come in and sit down. I said, what can I do for you? And she said, is the doctor in? I said, he is. He's across the hall. But anyway, that's where I got started in that. That's the only thing I did. Then I built a blueprint machine, but I'd done that out of work here. And I saw the need for it. And when I designed the darn thing and built it, and it worked. It was pretty slow, but it worked. And so it went on for a while, and I opened that place on the 6th of June, 1936.
And this was located
in the Weiser building.
In the Weiser
second
building.
Floor.
Second floor.
Well, then the thing had happened. An old Weiser Marsh was up there then. He was a great guy. He did a lot for me. He knew what I was trying to get started. Well, one day I got a call from an old friend of mine, Charlie Price. Price.
Yes.
You remember Charlie?
Price.
And he says, Roger, he says, I want to buy a camera. Nobody in town sells them. You're in the photography business, aren't you? I said, well, yes, so I got an awful big camera up there. He said, well, order one. I said, what is it? And he says, it's called an Argus. He says, they sell for $12. And he gave me the address, place International Research Corporation in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I wrote to them ordering one camera. They wrote back that I had to buy 3 of them to get a franchise. They cost the dealer $8 a piece. I told Charlie, I said, my God, Charlie, they want me to buy 3 of those things, and that's $24. I had it all figured out. If I could do $60 a week business, I would get a salary of $15 a week. A long time before I got to $15. But anyway, I told him, Charlie said, well, forget it. An hour later, he called up and he says, hey, order 3 of them. I got the other 2 sold for you. So that got me in the photographic business, really, see.
So this was 1936.
1936.
Started in the photography.
Yeah. And so things went on from there, and my interest grew. And 1937, a guy named Ross Goodman come in from the Leica company. And he had been in 2 times before us. He says, hey, we want a dealer in Muncie, and we don't like to sell our cameras in drugstores. But says the Owl Drugstore has one. They had a big photographic department. The Owl Drugstore wants to franchise, but he says, I don't want to give with it, but when I leave town today, there's going to be a dealer here. So I more or less reluctantly bought just a few pieces. He said, you buy 3 things, we'll give you a franchise. Well, that got me into it, and I started playing around the camera, and I fell in love with it. And it's one of the smarter things that I've done. Because of this, I specialized in that camera. I sold other cameras, but that was my leading thing.
And this was the
Leica. This right here. And so I started selling them, and I began to develop a following. One day, all I had when I moved from the Weiser building down on Jackson Street across from the police station, the Canopic building, Charlie, can't think of his name. He was in the real estate business on the corner, and I was in the next room, and then Burgar had a typewriter place.
Okay. Directly across from the old police station.
Yeah.
The old
Which
city
was
hall.
new when I was there.
Right, the old city hall.
The old city hall. And so that I had over in the corner was a small fenced-in area. I had a desk, an old typewriter sitting there. And I had a little chewing gum case. That's what it actually was. Case about this long, about this high. I put some film in. I had about a 6-foot shelving I built and one showcase that I could put some cameras in.
And the film case was just about, maybe 18 inches.
18 or 20, maybe 24, something like that.
And then about 12 inches high.
And I had some film in there. Okay. And I had no connections with anybody, really, except I bought some stuff. And the rest of the room was just vacant. Mm-hmm. And one of my friends, I don't know who it was now, he said, why in the hell don't you put something in this room? Because I don't have money. He said, well, can't you buy this stuff on consignment or something? I said, no, they want money. And he says, I'll tell you what you do. He says, go over to Cree Gable and get a Congolian rug and put up there in that corner and get a nice Davenport, or instead of get a maple Davenport and some chairs and a cocktail or a coffee table and a couple of lamps. I well, what's that going to do? He says, place to people come in and sit down and talk to you and talk to them themselves. One of the smartest things that I ever had happen, because it did exactly what he said. Guys who was interested in photography, they come in, 2 or 3 of them, they sit there and talk, and they would sell each other stuff. Mm-hmm. And I always, in my stores, wanted people to do that. Back in, when the heck was it? 1949, I think it was. We moved up on Walnut Street, again, the Weiser building, on the lower floor, on the Walnut Street side. And, I had people come in my door and go out my back door to the elevator. The guy said to me, don't you get tired of us using this for the entrance to the building? I said, no, I don't. I love it. I said, as a stranger, see, a lot of people coming in my store. So I said, it helps. But anyway, back to the early beginnings of that. It was a meager existence on that thing, but I was interested in this thing, and the longer I was in it, the more interest I developed. And when I finally retired, I got in a financial bind. I lost the store through a receivership. And right away I got a call from Leica. They want me to go to Dayton, go to the store down there. And I owed Leica more money than anybody else. But this is what I say. It was lucky that I got with them, because I was sold on the camera and I did a lot of promoting. And they knew it. So I went to Dayton and went to work. And so actually everything changed when I went down there. Nice things started happening. And so I started selling licenses. But the point was, I went to work there June the 1st, 60, yeah. But I told him I didn't want to...
In Dayton.
In Dayton. I said, I don't want to be in the store the first day. He said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know anything about this town. I said, I want to visit other camera shops and get an idea of what they do, what they say, how they act. So when I'm talking to a customer, I got some idea how they were treated at the other place. I said, if I talk to them long enough, I'll know which place it is. And I visited other camera shops. They didn't know me from Adam, and I learned a lot by doing that. It was a time well spent. Well, now, I noticed as when I first went in the store and got working, they come out in a couple of weeks or a few days or whatever, and wanted the information I wanted on my business card. I gave them what I wanted. I said, I want my home telephone number on there. But I noticed something. Any of those fellows, if you call them at home about business, they just die. They just couldn't stand having a customer take up their time at home. I said, I want my home phone number on there. Oh, you don't want that. I said, I do want that. I want it on there. So I would hand these cards out to people. Well, not kidding. I'd say, feel free to call me at home anytime, but make it before 2 or after 3 because I need an hour nap. So anyway, 2 weeks after I was there, the receptionist says, I don't understand something. And I never was out this.
Your
I
camera.
carried it with me. I needed recognition. And so...
You still carry your camera.
I still do. I still need recognition. And I also occasionally take a picture. Anyway, she says, I don't understand something. You came here, you didn't know anybody, and now we're getting call after call for you. He says, what's the cause of that? I said, it's very simple. I asked them to call me. And so I've always carried it for 2 reasons. I do use it. And it's very nice to, I still know the street corner in New York, taking a picture. I felt somebody beside me. I said, oh, I'm sorry. No. He said, I'm sorry I interrupted you. He said, I just saw you taking a picture. I want to see what you're looking at. And that's happened to me many times. And, well, I'm getting way around and things, but I was there at the Leica School in 1957 at New York. And every night there'd be 3 of us about taking pictures. We got up to Times Square one night, and there's a guy standing there with a Leica taking a picture and a bag full of lenses and things. We talked, and I was getting cold. I said, hey, let's go to the Astor Bar there and go and have a cocktail or something. I'm cold. I said, got cold, I just haven't nothing to cool on. So this stranger said, no, I said, I got to be at a meeting at 12 o'clock, darn near midnight. And so the 3 of us went over there, and we walked in the door, and the maitre d' was in there. He says, here, sit at this table. I don't want to get back by his door. I'm about to freeze. He says, it's warm here. Sit down here. I want to talk to you. We all 3 had lights. The maitre d' ignored everybody coming on the door. He wanted to talk about photography, like in particular. We left there. I said, well, let's get back to the hotel. Let's go up to Lindy's and have a cup of coffee first. So we walked a block or so up to Lindy's and sat down and had a cup of coffee. On the way up there, now there's only 8 of us in a class in New York. We 3 were together. We ran into 2 other guys from the class. And we all went into Lindy's. Well, so now it's about 1 o'clock and dark. Times Square isn't brilliant all night. Or wasn't then anyway. So we went out to catch a cab, got in. One of the guys had to sit up with the driver, who was in the platform. And we were talking about Leicas all the way back to two hotels, one about a block apart, part of the state. Pulled up in front of the hotel, and the one guy, Bill, started opening the door, and the driver reached around, got a hold of the door, and slammed it shut. He said, now you guys are just here in New York having fun, enjoying yourself, and you got time to sit here and talk to me about Leicas. I still got his card. But that's what I mean by the recognition of the thing. See? In Lindy's. My wife and I were in there one time, and waiters went by. I had it laid on the table beside me so I could watch it. And this one waiter slowed down and looked at it. Finally, he went by, and I said, for God's sakes, here, look at it. You ain't going to hurt it. Pretty soon, 3 waiters, ignoring the hell out of people. Just
looking at the Leica.
Just looking at the Leica and talking. But photography is a wonderful talking thing. It's better than golf, really, because it's more restful.
Now, at the time that while you were still in Muncie, you were just selling Leicas. When did you begin taking photographs? And when did you get into
I immediately started, when I started selling them, I started using them.
Okay, so you were available for photography.
Well, I did some commercial work, and I figured this, I needed to use it to get regular, and then there was additional income. I didn't go out and beat the woods and try to go out and take pictures every day, but jobs would come up and I'd do them. I had a slogan on my front window, "We copy everything." What is that? What I was talking about. One day I got a package from a minister up in someplace up in Michigan. He says, "I drove by your store and saw that your sign says we copy everything, so I'm taking you at your word. Says, here are a bunch of religious pictures and I need color slides." I hadn't done this, but I figured out a way to do it. And I shot the slide and he paid me. But this is the thing, I've used it and used it and used it. And so now I belong to the Leica Historical Society, and we're going to have a convention, and I'm an honorary member and also a charter member, started in 1968. And we're going to Charleston, South Carolina for the convention. And then my son in Sarasota said, "Dad, you're halfway down there, more than halfway." I'm going down. So I've got a friend he's going to go with me. And I told him he'd have a free week in Sarasota, Florida, if he'd go with me, help me. So we're going to do that. But anyway.
So you were taking photographs even in Muncie?
Oh, yes.
Right.
Well, that's why the endurance flight.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask was, could you talk about some of the old outstanding subjects that you photographed?
Well, I don't know that so many of them are outstanding. We had a very active camera club there too.
Mm-hmm. Were you instrumental in getting it started?
Yes, Warner Watson and I started the thing. It's still going. It's called a Middle Tristan now, but it's the same thing. Not many of them who started are there now. I don't think any of them are.
Warner Watson has passed away.
Yeah, I loved his funeral. Warner and I were great friends. Excuse me for making that noise. Yeah, I was very active in the camera. In fact, I met in my store for a long time. And so.
But you did take the photographs of the endurance flight. How did you get involved in that? How did you know it was even coming about?
I was crazy about airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy about airplanes. I got to the airport on any possible chance, and or possible reason. So certainly on weekends I was out there and took a lot of pictures, and that's what got me into the thing. And I knew Clyde Shockley real well.
And Clyde Shockley was the
manager
of the airport.
And Bill Moffett flew to the airport for quite a while, but they went to work for Ford Warner. And so all those things tied together. And so, yeah, I loved it. I loved to take pictures of airplanes and that thing and the activities going on. Well, I eventually took training, flew for a while, but the war came along and couldn't spend the time with it, or nor the money.
And we're talking about the endurance flight. That was when 2 young aviators tried to break the in time of being aloft without landing.
They went 23 days.
That was here in Muncie.
Yeah.
And the airplane was called Miss Suntan, right?
Yeah. And there were so many things happening out there then. And I was out there a lot of times. Maybe my first wife would be out there a lot. And
could you talk about some of the people that you met out at the airport? Some that stand out in your mind?
Just the people who happened to be there, and not too many of them. I remember one thing that happened that was interesting to me on December the 7th, 1941. I lived out just off of Bethel Pike. Me and my first wife and two boys. And I was in the bathroom cleaning up. I wanted to go out to the airport for a while. An announcement on that Pearl Harbor had been attacked. I walked in the old operation office, which grew into being what it is today as a restaurant and everything. They had a lot of Ball State students there learning to fly. And I said to one of them, I said, "You've been listening to the radio?" And he says, "Yeah, it's on. Why?" I just wanted to heard the news. He said, "Oh, what news?" I said, "Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Japanese." He said, "What are you trying to pull?" I said, "Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Japanese. Turn the thing on a news station." They did. And this one guy looked at me and he said, "Why, we'll let those little yellow guys in 2 weeks." I said, "I hope you're right." Which, of course, he wasn't. But things like that. Then I can't remember too many people, others who weren't connected to the airport. I have a picture of a Beechcraft stagger wing. You know what that is? Stagger wing Beech. The top wing is back to the floor wing.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Only one airplane ever like that. It was a fine airplane. And my first Leica that I ever sold was sold to Marjorie Kisselman. And I don't know whether you ever knew Bill Miner or not, but Bill was hung around the Kisselman family, and the mother, who wrote in Collier's magazine under the name Leslie Curtis.
Okay.
She didn't want to spend much time with the kids, and the net result was fatal, almost. Anyway, she told Bill Miner that she would keep him in college in Ball State as long as he wanted to go if he would take care of Don, see that he didn't get in any trouble. So he became part of a companion to Don Kisselman, who was much younger than Bill. And so Bill borrowed Marge's Leica and took a picture of this red Beechcraft out the airport with a guy filling a gas tank, Paul McNew, who works at the airport then for $5 a week just to get the feed of something. He slept in the darn place. Clyde Shockley let him do it, and Paul would do all kinds of work. Worked there all the time. He just retired from the air service here about 3 years ago at many $1,000s a year. But Bill Miner got sold his color slides he shot to a magazine known as Proper Aviation. And so I kept one of them, mounted the thing, and here just 2 or 3 years ago I decided to give it to Bill. He didn't have one. He lived at Macon, Georgia, and I was going through it. But I've got a color slide thing. But I would like to point to that. That's the first, was made on the first Leica that I sold. So, there were many people out there. There's a picture hanging out there of Ed Ball and Bill Moffett flying, taking their kind of in a silhouette. I was sitting in the back seat, and so I made a new print of that not long ago and gave one to Ed. And Ed said, "Where were we going? Why were we flying?" I said, "Well, Ed, you want me to fly over to Lafayette with you just to take some pictures with a Leica and see how it did from the air?" And I said, "A Beechcraft is a miserable picture for aerial photography, a miserable airplane for aerial photography, because you no way to shoot down. You don't have enough doors or windows to open when you can shoot." We flew over to Lafayette and back, and I took that picture on the way. But a lot of things happen. Now, there's so many people. Well, Andy Rose and Harry Kisselman and all those guys were interested in photography. In fact, I always use, and I still got in my pocket, slide rule. Everybody got a calculator. I got them too, but this thing is handy, and once in a while I have in my pocket that I'm going to do some figuring.
And that's a slide rule.
Yeah. Somebody said, "Well, my God, you can do anything on the computer. You can do a slide rule." I said, "Yeah, but there's one thing a slide rule will do that a computer, no computer will do." He said, "What's that?" I said, "I can set up some and then look at it, but you don't know what I'm looking at." I said, "Einstein wouldn't know what I was looking at. I want to figure a discount or something." See? They would put it on a number here, and it was 25%, third off, or 40 off, or what, see? And Harry Gibson used to call up and say, I'm coming up here to talk to you about a camera. Get your damn dipstick out. So anyway.
Your slide rule.
Yeah. I'm doing a little swearing here when we record it.
That's all right.
Well, I don't know what else. I've rambled around so darn much. I don't know what I have said so well.
You've done fine. We can begin to wrap this up if you're getting tired.
I'm not tired. This is...
Would you give me your impression of the Two Young Flyers, since that became a classic?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Well, I saw Eddie McDaniels coming into the airport, but I never really knew him.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Moffat taught him to fly.
Mm-hmm.
Funny thing there, Bill was over my house a few years back, and they had a replica airplane of Lindbergh's that flew around over the country, and with it was a chase plane, as they called it, to go along. It was an old Stinson airplane. Well, Bill walked over and was looking at that, and the pilot was standing there, and they got talking, and the pilot said to Bill, says, did you ever fly an OX-5? An OX-5 is an engine, World War engine, that a lot of guys learned to fly back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
Bill said, yeah, I've flown many of them. He said, do you belong to the OX-5 club? And Bill said, no. I said, here, write this guy's name down. He's the president. Write to him and tell him you want to join, because with your experience, you should go on that. So he handed it to Bill, and Bill looked at it and says, I taught him to fly. His name was A. McDaniels. So anyway.
So it was McDaniels and Baxter were the men's names.
Yeah. And I never really knew Baxter, and I didn't know A enough to say he was a friend of mine or anything like that. I just knew who he was. Mm-hmm. I saw him flying in there before that door slide in an airplane. It was just covered with ice. We don't know how he got in the airport, but hey, he was a good pilot. But
would you talk a little bit about that experience? You took some of the pictures, didn't you, of flight that day, or those days?
Yeah. A lot of those pictures in that film, nearly all the still pictures I took are my pictures, and that's something I want to talk to you about too. That film, you're acquainted with it. You were in it, and they made a horrible mistake in there. Do you know it?
No.
Well, where did the story about Darwin Andrews arranging a talk in Indianapolis between Eleanor Roosevelt and the two pilots? Do you know where that come from? I'd like to find out, because it didn't happen. And what burned me up, that's so stupid. I even got a tape on there. But anyway, I'm sitting there, and they're asking me questions, and I'm telling that not Darwin Andrews, Bob Fowler, the guy from Franklin Engines, arranged with Eleanor Roosevelt to meet the two pilots. Well, I was having lunch at the old Polly Paris, and Bob called me.
Now, the Polly Parrot was a restaurant
on
East Jackson Street.
East Jackson, just east of Walnut.
Okay.
And then before it got to the alley.
So you were at the Polly Parrot restaurant.
Well, Jimmy Fiddler called me first.
And Jimmy Fiddler was, at that time, the
weatherman.
meteorologist, the weatherman,
weatherman, yeah.
at Ball State.
Well, no, he was really, I don't know what he was doing at Ball State, but that was here. I know he was out the airport all the time.
Okay.
He had a remote connection that would give the weather over the thing. I think probably one of the first radio weathermen.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, come on, Jim. He wanted to come up and take a picture of Mr. Roosevelt. I said, forget it. I hung up, went back to sit down. And then pretty soon the phone rang again. They called me the phone, and it was Bob Fowler. He arrived there. I did the official photography for Franklin Engines and other airplanes. He really wants you up there. Says, Eleanor Roosevelt's going to meet the boys, and says, we want to get pictures of them. So I went up there and took the pictures. And I'll show you.
Now, this is your scrapbook we're looking at?
This is part of my autograph collection. Well, oh, here it is. Here's the pictures I shot. Here's their autographs. This is the Roberts Hotel. Now, artists.
We're looking at pictures of Eleanor Roosevelt and Jimmy Fiddler.
Yeah. Here's Luker, Jimmy Fiddler, Lee Eikenberry, who was a Cub distributor, and this is Baxter. This is Eleanor, of course. That's A. McDaniel, and this is Bob Fowler.
This is in your scrapbook.
I
And they're
went up-
all autographed.
This is part of my autograph collection.
Mm-hmm.
I took the picture, rushed down to the store, developed, made prints, and got back up to the room, her room, and asked her to autograph these. I wanted to see her. And her secretary said, well, she's getting dressed. She's going to give a talk here tonight. And so I said, well, will you ask her if she'll autograph these pictures? So she did. Then they had all these guys who were down in a room in a hotel. Instead of taking them home, they took them to the hotel to rest up after the flight, and this was the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in and had all these guys autographed. Then I practically didn't get out of the room with my life. Everybody wanted a picture. I said, you go jump in the lake. I ain't going to do it to you. So I got them both autographed there, and but this is what it's talking about. I said this while they interviewed me, and then they turned right around and say Darwin Andrews arranged a meeting in Indianapolis. She wasn't even in Indianapolis, see? And it's right at the end of that film. Who in the devil come up with that stupid story? Somebody said, somebody at Ministry of Culture Center said it. Well, I was over there and showed the film, the tape after I got it to Karen Vinson and Heather. They hadn't seen it yet. She said, well, I don't know where that comes from, but somebody brought it up. Well, it gets me, whoever edited that film had to hear me talking and then come up with a completely different story about the same thing. And it's a little point, but I mean, it rubbed me the wrong way. Incidentally, I brought something for you. Thing a friend of mine gave me is out of the paper of June the 20th, 1994. What it costs to let 3 cities entertain you: Dayton, Ohio, New York City, and Muncie, Indiana.
Wow.
And there's a story about it on the back there.
Thank you very much.
Hope you might like
Keep that
that.
article.
Here's another thing. This is the thing that I went to down the Muncie newspaper to get the story on it. Here it is, photo of Pelham, the whole story about the darn thing. I made a copy of something else for you. I thought in your college work you'd get a kick out of that, but it had nothing to do with what we've been talking about.
Well, is there anything else you want to talk or tell about your life and your career before we wind this up?
Well, 2 things that I feel very strongly about is the fact that of all my friends and acquaintances, I can't call everybody a friend, but I know a lot of people, I've met a lot of people, and but there's 2 things that have caused me to know these people, and that is either music or Leica. I belong to the Leica Historical Society. I get calls from foreign countries, and I sell stuff that way. And it's a joy to know these guys. They're all pretty high-tech people. And when you take somebody who would pay $16,000 for one camera, and I found one, I paid $1,000 for it, and I sold it for $16,000. It's a rare one. And I've been looking for another, and I haven't found it.
You're not still in business, are you, Roger?
Not per se, not like a store, except I'm very much in business.
You're wheeling and dealing
Well,
still in Leicas.
Here, many years ago, I was asked to give a talk in Chicago, photographic camera collector, something, a collector's organization. Well, they taught me into coming up to their show, which they have 2 times a year, March and October, and which a hotel room, a big room, maybe 200 tables in there, nothing but photographic equipment and stuff. I've done quite well. I've got a big following up there, and I enjoy it. In fact, one of the fellows, Jim Mayer, who was instrumental in putting it on for the show, or for the club, I told him last year when I was up there, I said, you know, Jim, I'm getting older, and this stuff's getting hard to get. I said, maybe I'll quit coming here, but I said, what I would like to do is rent a table, get a basket of apples, and a couple of easy chairs, just sit here and talk to people. And And I've met so many interesting people at those shows.
Mhm.
And I like to have fun. And selling to me is a great thing. And if you can relax and enjoy it. I don't really know what an enlarger is or not. You know. I had two life enlargers up there, one real nice one and one a piece of junk. Both of them had negative carriers, which incidentally are hard to find today. So this fellow come up very, very well dressed and had quite an accent. So he says, "Would you sell me that negative carrier out of that enlarger?" I said, "Yeah." "How much?" I said, $50. He said, "That's awful high," but he said, "You can't find them." I said, "I'll take it." I said, "Well, now, wait a minute. You got to listen to my whole deal." He said, "Well, what is your deal?" I said, "Well, I'll sell you that negative carrier for $50. But if you'll take that enlarger and the negative carrier, I'll give you both of them for $35. He looked at me funny. Turned out to be the ambassador from Denmark. And we became good friends. We looked him up for some silly reason. He asked for a transfer to Vietnam. I don't know why. I would not leave Chicago to go to Vietnam. But anyway, he was a real nice guy. Here, on my birthday, the 20th of December, here 2 years ago, UPS brought me a package. No return address. I opened it up and there was a bottle of Aquavit, elixir of life or something like that, from Denmark, with a letter on a nice letterhead with the crest and everything, giving me instructions on how to drink it. Supposed to drink it, keep it in the freezer. And then when you drink it, you're supposed to have a bottle of Danish beer, either Tuborg or I'll get the other one, to follow it up with. And I thought it was a delightful gift, except the darn stuff's flavored with caraway seed, and I can't stand caraway. I gave it to my friend Sid. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. I'm meeting people like that, and I get a kick out of things, and I get a big kick out of people. And I had a lens lender I wanted $200 for, and a real cocky guy comes up. I love these kind of characters. "What's your best price on that lens?" I said, "What lens?" He said, "That one." I said, "Oh, $300. "Well, it's only marked $200. I said, "Yes, but my best price would be $300. And I mean, the funny thing is, you're going to have fun doing that if you don't take yourself too seriously. And you usually, a guy that's getting a little huffy or something, you usually come up with something. But
So the selling experience that you had in Dayton was much better than the one you had here in Muncie?
no, my father was an excellent salesman. I mean, I learned a lot of selling points from him. The point is, the market is completely different. And there's something, I wouldn't want to be in New York, I wouldn't want to be in Chicago. But a city the size of Dayton or Indianapolis is, to me, a nice, the reason is there's a very versatile setup in businesses. A lot of little businesses, and unfortunately a lot of little ones are going out. But anyway, and you're close enough to people, you can be friendly, whereas you go in a store in New York, why, buy it, get out of my way, and so forth. And so I think I've enjoyed that very much. I've had a business in Indianapolis for a while. At the same time I had one in Muncie. And going to Dayton was a completely new experience. And
Did you regret having to close the Muncie store?
no. Oh, at the time it was terrible because I'd had it for 25 years. And I'd guessed wrong on a couple of deals, and I was forced into a position where I just couldn't meet it, and the guy wouldn't change his mind.
And you had to sell.
I had to just give up. But
And what year was this when you left Muncie?
1960.
1960, and you never really returned here to live.
No.
Mm-hmm.
And but I like where we live. A funny thing happened. This town of Trotwood is on the west side of Dayton, and see, different from Indiana. All towns will have a mayor, maybe even a city manager, and 3 or 4 different police departments. You got township police, you got city city police, you got sheriffs, and FBI and everybody else. But anyway, the thing was there, the guy was to be my boss, but Nelson, when I went down there, he took Betty and I out through Trotwood. See, because on the west side, you're already on the way to Indiana without driving through Dayton. So, Bud says, one thing you won't have to worry about out here in Trotwood is the blacks moving out here, because there's Jewish people, a lot of Jewish people there. When the house gets empty, they buy the house. The Jewish people moved. We got the problem. It's not bad. But I like it there. My wife thinks all her troubles caused her moving out, but that had nothing to do with it. She had 2 strokes. She's in a beautiful nursing home.
So your wife is still alive?
Yeah, my second wife.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and now my boys, I got a daughter by my present wife, and 2 boys by my first wife. Now my daughter and one son lives in Sarasota, and he's very much involved in I don't know how many things. One of his main things, he takes people on tours of the Central American places. He had them up the Amazon River and up Ecuador and Galapagos and Nicaragua, all over. He arranges these tours, organizes them, and takes them. And then he's also a photographer for the Molten Marine Laboratory. And
so he inherited.
Well, you know, the funny thing is, my boys, we got a divorce when my boys were quite little, so they weren't around me in photography, but they were interested. And both of them are very much interested. Bob has had many color slides published, more than I have. I haven't really worked with that, but he has. And so he there. Even my daughter's interested in photography. And as I say, I wasn't there to influence them in the thing. They just, of course, they heard a lot about it from me and even as little kids. I made a point when my boys were little, instead of taking something like that up and putting it up where they couldn't reach it, if I took something in a house like that and they would want to see it, I'd sit down with them and show it to them, and pretty soon their interest was gone. I never had to worry about stuff like that. So, but there, I get a big bang out of the guys. Bob, before he starts the trip, he'll call me before he leaves. When he gets back, he'll call me that he's back.
So you're close to your sons now.
Yeah. And David, the one out in Idlewild, California, is a director in a school for autistic children. I was out there once, went to school with him one morning. How he stands it, I don't know. I couldn't take it. But he's been in that for years. And he and his family, including his wife's mother, went to England for 3 weeks here a short time ago. About the first real vacation they've been able to land. I know you got an appointment here at 10:30. I don't know what time.
Well, I would like to know if there's anything you want to finish with, and we'll wrap this up.
Well, you mean this singing a song or something?
Oh. No. You've been a long-time businessman.
Yeah, and I enjoy the work I'm in. I'm glad it turned out this way. Mm-hmm. And I've been helping an awful lot of people. You know, there's a lot of things about saying, "Oh, this went wrong, that went wrong." But it's kind of nice to talk about the thing that went right. And so I've enjoyed that. And Bill Moffat and I are just the opposite. See, he's always flowing. That's been his job. He never was in a place where he had to sell something or deal with people.
Sell himself.
See, now, he crawls in the shower. Him and Phil Schooley, I could spank both of them.
Now, Bill Moffat was a pilot at the airport?
Well, he started as a pilot at the airport, and then Warner Gear, got into flying, and Jack Simpson was there at the time, and they did a lot of flying for them. Then the war came along, and Bill couldn't get in the military. The only thing he could do in the Air Force was train, and he hated that. So he took a job with TWA. and Warner Gear they thought they were going to have to give up their flying schedule program, and so he went to work for TWA for a while, and then Warner Gear wanted him back, so they decided they had to have an airplane during the war to get things done. So he's back there, and he flew for 29 years, and nobody got so much as a scratched finger.
Good pilot.
He is so exacting, and he carries it into all walks of his life. I was with him one time when he looked at a suit of clothes, and he drove that salesman nuts with questions and things, and the criticism he did of things. And when I had my store here, he would be buying something from me, and I said, Bill, if you weren't my best friend, I'd throw you around through that window.
Now, Phil Schooley, what was his position in Muncie?
Phil Schooley left high school, and I think he went to Ball State. Went to work for the Merchants National Bank and just retired from there just a few years ago. Never did anything else. I was with him here a couple of weeks ago. He said, I was born in this town. I've lived in this town, worked in this town. And he said, here I am retired. I don't have a relative in this town. And now Phil, it's a funny thing. Phil has been a good friend of mine. He was in D. Malay when I lived. In fact, I was master counsel when he came in. And he of course worked in the bank. But I wanted to call him one day, and I said, hey, Phil, let me pick you up and go have a cup of coffee. Well, I'm not dressed. To me, getting a cup of coffee is not a real big social thing, other than friendliness. But he wouldn't do it. He finally, there was a class reunion of the class of 27 here just a few weeks ago. And Orville Williams called me. He was in that class. He said, my gosh, Roger, you know these guys. Why don't you come and go to it? I said, all right. It was all right if I call a couple other guys. So I called Phil Schooley, and he actually showed up. He was a class of 26. Now, he must have been smarter than me, because he was born 2 years after I was. He was born in 1910. And he, what the heck did he say? Anyway, and he graduated, he graduated in 1926. Well, now, for crying out loud, I'm 2 years older, so he must have been a heck of a lot smarter than me, someplace like that.
Well, you said a lot of them like to graduate early.
Yeah. So anyway, but he went to work at the Merchants National Bank, and that's the whole story of his life.
Well, Roger, this has been fun. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Oh, I have. That's my point, is in selling, the two things you have to learn is talk, and then know when to shut up.
You sound like my father. He was a salesman, too.
Yeah. And so,
well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for asking me. It's been a pleasure.